Hey guys! This is part 5 of What If Naruto Was in Bloodborne. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 15, Preliminary Violence. Sasuke was glad he got to fight first, but on the other hand he still wasn't entirely certain what was going on with the mark on his neck. He sized up his opponent, one of the genin from Kabuto's cell. Like most of the AIM teams, Kabuto's cell had apparently opted for a standard outfit consisting of a high-collared, sleeveless, purple shirt with a short-sleeved, white one underneath, a simple obi around his waist, purple pants, blue sandals and purple fingerless gloves. Yoroi Akato then took that a step further by his Hittite covering his hair, round shades over his eyes, and a fabric mask over his face that hung down to his neck. The other competitors made their way up to an attached balcony to watch the fights from an elevated angle, as did the Jonin commanders, Hokage, and the proctors besides Hate. The sickly proctor raised one arm, eyed the two genin competitors, then swiftly lowered it. Begin! With the call to start, Sasuke palmed 4 shuriken in his right hand, crossed his arms to switch 2 to his left hand as he lowered his stance, and uncrossed his arms as he threw the volley of shuriken. He wasn't sure how much chakra he could risk using, so he tried just activating his newly awakened Sharingan, and nothing else. The Uchiha flinched in pain and reached up for the back of his neck over his right shoulder with his left hand. The markings were creeping along his skin again. Sakura and Naruto were both worried, but to their surprise some of the Konoha Jonin seemed to recognize this. That mark! Anko hissed angrily. Her hands suddenly gripped the railing. Kakashi narrowed his eye, ready to step in if need be. Yoroi dodged Sasuke's initial volley and took the opportunity to charge. What's wrong, Uchiha? More tired than you wanted to admit? He asked as he delivered a right punch through the younger genin's guard to the stomach, then grabbed the stumbling boy by the right arm in his left hand. Sasuke blinked at the yellow glow at the point of contact, then he started to feel drained. Let go of me, he snapped, trying to pull free but already weakening. He tried to think of a way out, but he had no ninjutsu he could use and his stamina was draining fast. Then the Uchiha got an idea. He could not pull away from his opponent, so he punished them for being in close. Sasuke jumped and swung his left leg high as his left hand dropped down to grab a kunai from the shuriken holster on his right leg. Yoroi blocked the kick with his right forearm, but was unprepared for the suddenly rather vicious thrown kunai lodged into his left shoulder. He hopped back as he reflexively released Sasuke, who flipped to land in a crouch. From that crouch the Uchiha tried to focus his chakra again but winced in pain. The marks were still trying to grow. Then, to the surprise of the Jonin who knew what was happening, the marks started to recede as Sasuke stood up and cracked his neck. Next time you grab me, he began as he caught his breath, I'll make you regret it, Konoha ninja or not. He warned, truthfully only giving the warning because it was a fellow Konoha shinobi. Sasuke realized he could not use chakra right now. That limited his toolkit a lot. He still had basic taijutsu, shuriken jutsu, bukujutsu, and possibly stealth if he could make use of a smoke bomb effectively. The Uchiha expected Yoroi to be harder to get a read on, but the older genin was visibly angry in his body language. Yoroi reached to remove the kunai from his shoulder but stopped short. This placement, was that intentional? He asked. Once removed, the kunai would not be blocking the wound and an artery was definitely cut. However, the longer he left the blade there, the more his left arm started to go numb. Yes, Sasuke answered plainly. I don't care if we're both Konoha ninja. Stay out of my way. I refuse to be halted here by the likes of you, he said bluntly as he readied 2 handfuls of shuriken, 4 of the small throwing stars in each hand. Yoroi leaped aside to dodge the volley of shuriken. As soon as he did, Sasuke gave chase. Much to the older genin's irritation, the younger was attacking his injured left side with a right round kick. He grabbed the Uchiha's shin with his right hand. He decided withstanding the pain of the kick against his hand was worth draining the younger boy. Sasuke took offense to that and jumped up off his left foot. He used the leverage of Yoroi's grip on his right leg to adjust his angle and kicked out with his left leg as he fell. His left foot hit the kunai in his opponent's left shoulder, forcing the blade deeper and tearing the wound open to bleed freely. Yoroi leaped back with a cry of pain. He let go of Sasuke to clutch his now heavily damaged left shoulder. You little shit! He snapped angrily. The Uchiha had tucked his chin to roll to his feet that time, but he was panting heavier and perspiring more heavily after that exchange. A sore loser too? Sasuke asked as he winced. The mark on his neck ached, but he tried to power through it. We never would have gotten along, he managed through grit teeth as he shakily got to his feet. So I'm glad I already didn't look up to you, he added. Yoroi glared from under his shades. His left hand twitched as he tried to use it. Damn it, I can't make hand seals. He growled before he sighed in defeat. Proctor-san, I need medical attention, I can't win. He admit. After a bloody fight, Yoroi Kado has admit defeat, meaning Sasuke Uchiha advances to the third phase. Hate announced through some coughing. Enko was more surprised the boy had suppressed the mark on his neck. Go Sasuke-kun! Sakura and Ino both cried out in unison. Sasuke subconsciously reached for the ache in his neck as he watched Yoroi leave with the Iri ninja. Even though he could walk, they still put him in a stretcher due to his blood loss. The Uchiha wondered if he'd get that kunai back, but didn't care much either way. Then Sasuke noticed one of the Irionen had red hair, red eyes, and glasses under her uniform as he was exiting the arena section of the room by going up the walkway. The fact she was also his age tipped him off that Karen was there, but he guessed that must have been organized by the Hokage so the girl could watch since she was apparently Uzumaki like Naruto. Also, she wanted to be his physician. She was probably there in case something went weird with Naruto's Uzumaki abilities now that Sasuke thought of it. The digital board started scrolling through names again. A few genin wondered if it was programmed to avoid matchups with members of the same team. Then the next two names appeared, Shino Aburame versus Nezumi. Before it could begin, however, Kakashi put a hand on Sasuke's shoulder. Alright, I'm free to take you to get that mark looked at now, he said quietly. The Uchiha winced at the knowledge the Jonin had known about it. He noticed the proctors and Hokage looking at him as well and made no arguments as Kakashi took him away. Shino Aburame stood across from the shortest member of the AIM cell. So, Aburame, huh? He asked curiously, and Shino nodded. I heard you guys have an affinity for bugs, he began as he reached up to pull off his hat as he pulled out a metal rod. So I guess you aren't popular with girls. But while people are scared of your clan, they don't talk much about how you fight, he said as he connected the hat and rod to make an umbrella. Naruto recalled the giant spiders in the depths and the massive insects in the forest of death. Is that guy seriously bad-mouthing bugs after where we just came from? He asked dryly. He's kind of right, most girls don't like bugs. Sakura agreed with a shrug. Ino nodded. Tenten and Temari rolled their eyes, but Hinata kept her thoughts to herself. Shino adjusted his shades. Your attempts to learn of my jutsu before we fight are admirable, he began, however they are useless. He finished simply. Why, you ask? He began again as Nezumi opened his mouth to speak and then closed it with an exasperated expression. Because I am used to hiding how my clan jutsu work. We clans are quite used to hiding our jutsu from others. He explained at length. Also, my Kikaichu have been creeping up on you while I have been speaking to keep you distracted. He continued as a sudden coalescence of a swarm of insects formed behind the AIM genin and covered him. They can do a lot of things, but right now they're draining your chakra directly. He explained as he adjusted his shades. Did I win yet? He asked as he cocked his head to the side. Nezumi attempted to charge, but the AIM genin apparently lacked in chakra reserves, as he began suffering chakra exhaustion symptoms before he reached the other genin. Then Shino burst into another cloud of insects. What? The AIM genin shouted in alarm. I anticipated you would attack me once you realized what was going on, Shino answered as he stepped out from under the balcony, so I switched with a mushy bunshin after I finished talking. He explained. Naruto decided the Aburame was probably the scariest genin there that wasn't himself or Gaara. Nezumi collapsed and Shino was declared the winner. The pale-eyed boy on Lee's team had something to say that caught Naruto's attention, however. I thought he was calling them somehow, but his very body is a hive. The older genin muttered, so that's an Aburame. He mused. Naruto's eyes widened at the description. That was almost as inhuman as he was. Maybe he could get away with being a little bit inhuman among other shinobi, more than he thought at least. His eyes drifted to the movement of the digital board as it began to cycle the names again. Unfortunately, the blonde still wasn't next. Misumi Tsurugi versus Kankuro. Misumi was dressed much like his teammate Yoroi, although he had regular spectacles instead of shades. I won't be letting my guard down like Yoroi did. In fact, let me be clear, you should forfeit before you get hurt. He threatened. This won't take long. He added. Kankuro scoffed at the bluster of his opponent. Yeah, I agree. He said simply to the last words, pulling the bandage mask from his back to place it on the ground next to him. Misumi charged. Don't try any tricks. I'll end this with the first strike. He declared, swinging his left arm to backhand Kankuro, who blocked it with his own left arm. Misumi's arm twisted like it was prehensile suddenly, looping around the other genin, his body following suit to constrict around Kankuro's. I can dislocate my joints and control my body with chakra. Surrender or I'll break your bones. Misumi threatened simply. Kankuro chuckled. No way. He responded with a smirk. You want to die, fool? Misumi asked angrily. Do you? Kankuro retorted with a grin. Misumi scowled and with a twist snapped the neck of his opponent. Oh dear, he just wouldn't quit, so I killed him before a proctor could stop me, he said with obviously fake regret. Now I can return the favor, Kankuro said as his head twisted around, revealing a puppet as the real Kankuro revealed himself from the bandages he'd been hiding in. Think how much more flexible you'll be with all your bones broken. The Sunanin said with a grin, chakra strings extending from his hands to the puppet, and with a twitch of his fingers the puppet burst arms from its torso to wrap Misumi in a hug and squeeze tight, snapping bones with multiple cracks. I'll leave your neck though, he decided with a cruel smirk, as he showed just enough mercy to let his opponent live. Hade coughed. Well, that was brutal, he said as Irainen came to carry out Misumi. Kankuro is the winner, so he advances to the third phase, he added, and Kankuro returned to the balcony as he wrapped the bandages back around his puppet. The genin watched the scoreboard, many hoping they would get to go next. Sakura wanted Sasuke and Kakashi to return before her turn, so of course the digital board chose the names, Sakura Haruno versus Ino Yamanaka. Let's do this, forehead, Ino mocked on her way down. I hope you're ready to lose, she taunted to tilt the other kunoichi. Sakura's eye twitched. Naruto, can I borrow no Kojuraboko? She asked. No, Naruto responded flatly. Sakura sighed even though it was the expected answer. She had just wanted a distraction no matter how minor. She knew she had not taken her kunoichi training as seriously as she should have since graduating, keeping only at her academy pace despite Irika's speech during the genin graduation ceremony. It wasn't until Sakura saw Naruto and Sasuke fighting so viciously to survive in the forest of death up close that it really hit her what kind of career she'd gotten herself into. She barely even remembered why. Probably because her parents were ninja originally. The pink-haired kunoichi had only recently since then registered that she lacked the same resolve as her team. She didn't have the same reasons for being a ninja, and her reasons were either flimsy or shallow. In essence, she had spent the last 2 days silently breaking down while trying not to let her teammates know she was doing it. Thankfully, they had their own problems and had not noticed. She ignored that them not noticing hurt because she knew they were probably actually going through worse now. Sakura walked down the steps as she considered her opponent. If there was anyone she could beat, it was Ino. Yamanaka may be a clan, but Sakura knew the blonde girl and her clan. She knew how they worked better than anyone except the Yamanaka themselves. The Nara and Choji clans probably. And maybe the Sandaime Hokage, just because he probably knew everything. Okay, that was a lot of people that knew more than Sakura about the subject, but she was confident she knew how to avoid the Yamanaka Hijitsu. The issue was Ino herself. Sakura scored higher in tests, but Ino was just better at taijutsu than her. So the pink-haired kunoichi considered her options before she took her hitaite from its position as a hairband and wrapped it over her forehead. Tying the ends around a ponytail, she pulled her long hair up into. You know what team I'm on, she said, and Ino's eyes shifted to Naruto. Why even try to intimidate me? Ino smirked. I wasn't aware being carried by stronger teammates made you so fearless. But I guess I'm not a weak link like you, she taunted mockingly. Is this a catfight? Temari asked with a grumble, wanting the two kunoichi to get on with it. I have seen Naruto and Sasuke-kun fight literal jonin and hold their own, Sakura pointed out. Naruto killed one while doped up on magic water, she added as she pulled out a kunai, and seeing Naruto fight the way he does up close has helped me realize what kind of career we're in. She continued as she dropped into a stance. So no hard feelings if I scar your face, okay? Ino's eyes widened in surprise that Sakura was willing to threaten that much over a preliminary fight. I will sneak into your house and force you to shave your own head in your sleep if you scar me. She retorted with a bit more venom as she took her own hitate from around her waist and put it over her own forehead. You think you can match me just by taking this seriously? Fine then. I'll show you which of us is a real kunoichi right now, Harino. Hade got the feeling the two kunoichi were taking this a little too personally, but that was none of his business. Begin, he announced with a chop of his hand. Sakura charged and made the ram sign with her kunai handle between her hands. She formed a pair of bunshin and weaved between them. Ino readied her own kunai as she tried to keep track of the real Sakura, but it was like trying to keep track of the cup with the coin when the other two could phase right through the original and each other. The Yamanaka hopped back and flicked the kunai to her left hand, throwing a volley of shuriken into the trio of Sakura. However, in a cloud of smoke they all disappeared, leaving a single log with shuriken embedded in it behind. Ino turned swiftly but was caught flat-footed by Sasuke standing behind her. This allowed the disguised Sakura to grapple the blonde kunoichi into a hold and put the kunai to her neck before she returned to her smirking pink-haired self in a cloud of smoke. You really thought Sasuke-kun just came back to jump into the arena with us? She asked mockingly. Ino flushed with embarrassment and anger. That was dirty, she grumbled. We're kunoichi, Sakura retorted blandly. She was glad she had at least a couple of days to collect her thoughts. Ino Yamanaka, are you able to break the hold? Hade asked. He had to just in case the girl was taking her time getting free. Ino sighed. No, I cannot break this pin. She grumbled. Even if she was a bit stronger than Sakura, there wasn't much strength could do against a joint lock and a kunai held up to the neck. Even if she didn't think the other kunoichi would actually sink the blade into her throat, it was still disconcerting to have it there. Shikamaru shook his head. I can't believe she fell for that, he muttered. I can, Naruto disagreed, arms crossed and eyes closed as he took on an almost sagely demeanor, a sudden pleasant sight in the middle of a tense situation that sets one on the back foot, he explained, and the other Konoha shinobi all stared in shock at the blonde. It's like a lesser form of my Oroku no Jutsu, he proclaimed proudly, ruining it entirely. Sakura was sorely tempted to throw something at Naruto, but she only had a kunai and Ino on hand, so she let the blonde girl go. His what now? Temari asked incredulously. Tenten sneered. You named that henge where you turn into a naked older girl version of yourself? Do you know how weird that is? She asked with a shake of her head. Wait, you didn't name that form, did you? She asked. No, Naruto lied, that would be weird. He agreed with shifty eyes. He understood they must never know. Kurenai's lips were tight. Hinata, you never mentioned that jutsu, she muttered quietly. Hinata flushed. You never asked? She attempted lamely. The jonin decided to accept that for now. I forgot about that, Kiba muttered. Wait, shit, he's right, he used it to sucker punch me during sparring once. He recalled with a wince. It never worked again. He added quickly at the looks he received, but not expecting it. He excused. Naruto frowned. Maybe I shouldn't have brought up my trump card. Now I can't use it if things get dicey, he muttered as he scratched his cheek. His trump card is turning into a naked woman. Gaara repeated the concept. His team glanced at him, but it was impossible to get a read on what the auburn-haired young genin thought of the situation. Eventually everyone got over Naruto's strange burst of intelligence-laced stupidity, or stupidity-centered intelligence, and were ready to watch Temari and Tenten in the next round. The blonde Suna Kunoichi frowned at the Konoha Kunoichi. So is your village full of weirdos? She asked. Yeah. Tenten agreed with a nod. Most of them are okay though. That blonde pervert up there, she continued with a gesture at Naruto, who loudly denied being a pervert, is actually also some kind of savant with weapons design. I have no idea how he got that thing working. She explained. Those two with the green spandex are my teammate and sensei. They're great at taijutsu, she added. Plus, we all made it this far, right? she added with a shrug. Temari scoffed. After that last match, that's hardly saying much. She mocked. I'm just glad that pink-haired girl took it seriously. But honestly, I thought I was going to be watching two civilian girls bicker rather than two kunoichi fight. She finished, and Ino scowled at her for the words. Tenten shrugged at the jibes towards her fellow Konoha kunoichi. Well, now who is being catty? She couldn't help but retort that much, though. Temari narrowed her eyes. See this, Tezzen? She asked as she lifted her large war fan off her back. The name indicated it was indeed iron. There are 3 stars on it. I'm going to win by the time you see the 3rd. She taunted. Naruto raised an eyebrow. For someone who dishes out smack talk, she sure can't take it in turn, huh? He muttered. Apparently Temari heard him because she glared at him. He'd been glared at by worse, so at this point he didn't even flinch. The blonde Uzumaki's attitude reminded a few of the genin that his teammate Sakura had said he and Sasuke picked fights with Jonin, and that Naruto had even killed one once. Temari recalled Gaara's interest in the shorter blonde and promptly returned her attention to the fight, but Naruto's eyes widened at the way the blonde kunoichi had looked away from him, which had been fearful. Naruto consciously reined himself in and became hyper-aware of his own subtle movements. Normal humans did not give off a passive air of violence, so he shouldn't either. As the blue-eyed Uzumaki got himself under control, Hate lifted his hand. Begin, the proctor announced with a chop. Tenten opened the fight by palming 6 shuriken in her right hand, crossing her arms to cross 3 shuriken to her left arm, and uncrossing her arms as she threw the volley. Temari responded by blocking them with the iron of her fan without opening it. Oh, come on. What's the point of an opening like that against a weapon like this? She asked mockingly. Tenten pulled a scroll from her tool pouch. Old habit. She retorted with a confident smirk as she unfurled her scroll to reveal a Fuin array. Then she reached for the array with her hand and flared her chakra. In a burst of smoke, the Konoha kunoichi threw a pair of large 3-bladed shuriken at the Suna kunoichi. This was followed by a pair of long, thin kunai, then another pair of similar kunai, and finally a hatchet. Temari had at first been insulted and batted the larger shuriken aside, but the continuous volley was a bit much unless she held a steady guard. The issue with a steady guard was it planted your feet. Fine for close quarters, but not so much if that was what the enemy wanted. So Temari unfurled her fan to reveal a dot instead and swung it. From the fan came a gust of wind-enhanced chakra that knocked Tenten's weapons flying to the sides, the hatchet spinning to a sliding stop off to Temari's left. You misunderstood. Don't tell me throwing things from trees like a monkey is your tactic, Konoha girl? She mocked derisively. Tenten bristled at the insult, but she didn't want to risk getting in close with an opponent that used such a large weapon so casually. The fact the older kunoichi was swinging around a hunk of iron that size, technically multiple hunks as the war fan wasn't just one piece of iron, meant that Temari was not to be underestimated in close quarters. Unfortunately, the Konoha kunoichi couldn't stand around thinking either as Temari unleashed another chakra-infused gust of wind. Tenten leaped aside to avoid it, since just being in the wake of the last blast told her that it would hurt to get hit by those. Naruto, however, was staring at the fan in confusion as he had yet to figure out the chakra component. How is she doing that? He wondered. Futon no jutsu. Kakashi answered. She's turning her chakra into wind as she flows it into her Tezzen, similar to how Sasuke-kun turns his to fire when he performs Katan no jutsu, although this is more bukijutsu than ninjutsu. He explained. Guy frowned in concern for his student. That Suna kunoichi must have impressive chakra control to have mastered Saishitsu Henka at her age. He mused, for bukijutsu to resemble ninjutsu, she must not just have good control, but reserves too. He realized. Temari opened her fan to the next step to reveal that her stars were indeed dots, and launched a wider gust of wind at Tenten with a sweeping swing of her fan. The Konoha kunoichi's eyes widened in alarm as she raised her guard. The girl wished she'd managed a kawarimi in time because the wind did indeed hurt. She rolled across the ground a few times before catching her breath and springing into a handstand to hop from there to her feet. Tenten tried to steady her breathing and come up with a plan, but she was unfortunately outmatched in this instance. Temari smirked and fully unfurled her fan to reveal all 3 dots she had referred to as stars. I guess the kunoichi in Konoha are as soft as I heard. She mocked before she swung. Tenten wanted to retort, but that was a bit hard as what felt like a hurricane of force took the air from her lungs and lifted her off her feet. The room spun around her before a sharp pain in her back as she landed back first on something hard and painful made her vision go white then black. So I win. Temari gloated before tossing the defeated and unconscious Kunoichi towards her own scattered weapons on the ground. Then two things happened at the same time. Lee leaped to rescue his teammate from further harm as Temari tensed under the weight of Naruto's malicious intent. A metallic grinding sound came from where Naruto's white-knuckled grip tightened on the railing. "What is wrong with you?" Lee snapped at the Suna Kunoichi. "Is that how you treat an opponent who tried their best?" he asked. Temari scoffed but was clearly flustered. "If you're so mad about it, fight me in the final phase." She dared both the genin who had gotten upset at her for that. The Suna genin were getting a reputation for being brutal, but Naruto knew the worst had yet to come. The blonde boy noticed L8, Hinata and Kiba in particular, were glancing at Gaara with fear as well. He supposed they would notice given their abilities. It was hard to tell with Shino though. Ino strangely seemed to be keeping an eye on Naruto himself. Apparently she noticed the metal bending under his grip. In his defense, the railing was mostly hollow anyway. After what felt like longer than the last matches, finally the digital board showed the next two names, Shikamaru Nara versus Kiba Inuzuka. The Nara sighed, "Damn it, I don't want to." He grumbled as Kiba gave a sigh of relief and confidently made his way down into the arena, which Guy had swiftly cleaned of weapons to return to his student. "Come on," Asuma encouraged gruffly, "I'll tell your parents if you quit in the prelims." He warned dryly before he took a drag of his cigarette. Shikamaru sighed again, louder and more intentional, before he grudgingly and slowly made his way down. "I'm not going to give up just because you're slow," Kiba pointed out. "I know," Shikamaru said. The Inuzuka didn't need to know that the Nara was intentionally annoying him since angry ninja tended to make mistakes. "Sorry, Asuma-san," Kurenai began, "but Kiba-kun has trained hard. I don't think Shikamaru-san will win from what I've heard," she warned. Sakura nodded. "Yeah, Shikamaru was always scoring barely above Naruto," she recalled. Asuma smirked. "Well, he might not show what he can do, he is pretty lazy." He agreed. "I just wish I had something to motivate him. I guess the threat of parental disappointment will do for now." Kakashi raised an eyebrow. "You make it sound like he'd be sure to win if he tried," he pointed out. Asuma nodded. "Yeah, but that doesn't matter much if he doesn't try, I suppose," he answered vaguely. Finally, the two former classmates who used to skip academy together were ready to go. "Begin," Habe declared with a chop. Kiba let Akamaru down. "So, we doing this for real or what?" he asked his former classmate. Shikamaru groaned. "Okaken will kill me if I quit here," he confessed. "I hate to take this chance at promotion away from you." He apologized in advance. Kiba smirked. "You won't catch us," he declared before he and Akamaru split to dash in different directions. The two charged and Shikamaru ducked. Immediately the Inuzuka leaped back as the Nara formed the unique hand seal. Akamaru altered his direction and began to circle the genin he and Kiba were supposed to fight, but Shikamaru just crouched there waiting. Kiba frowned. "You're not even going to face me in taijutsu unless I force it?" he asked. "Duh." Kiba sighed at the response and pulled out a Hyogen, popped it into his mouth and made the ram's seal. Suddenly his hair stood on end, his posture shifted, and his fingernails lengthened into claws. Naruto's eyes widened at the similarities. It wasn't quite like what the blood or the kitsune did to his body, but it was similar enough to get his attention. Sakura noticed too and she frowned. "What's Kiba doing?" she asked, slightly concerned due to what she knew of why Naruto had grown claws in the forest. "Shikyaku no Jutsu," Kurenai answered, "one of the hidden Giju Ninpo of the Inuzuka clan," she explained, and the name itself gave away that the entire point was using chakra to imitate beasts. Naruto made a mental note to check the history of the Inuzuka from the Sengoku Jidai, and see if he could look further back. He wondered if maybe they developed their special hijitsu using knowledge about the blood, but Kiba didn't have the same smell as him or Gaara. Kiba did have slit pupils though, and now so did Naruto. Kiba's stance lowered, bestial and predatory like Naruto had been in the forest, then he went lower and leaped. Naruto was pretty sure he could not spin like that, Nor could any beast though, so that was different at least. Shikamaru's eyes widened as Kiba becoming a hurricane of claws spinning through the air at high speeds at him. You're going that far? He snapped as he leaped to dodge. Akamaru leaped to intercept, and Kiba landed. Shikamaru was surrounded and his opponents were closer than before. We're ninja, Kiba reminded him as he leaped high to deliver a kick. Shikamaru leaned back as he jumped toward where Kiba jumped from. The Nara slid under the Inuzuka's attack as he made his hand sign, Kageme no Jutsu. He intoned as his shadow stretched to meet where Kiba landed, a branch forking off to intercept Akamaru from charging as well. Success, he declared with a smirk as his two-pronged shadow paralyzed his opponents. You know, Kiba began, this isn't tag, so just grabbing me doesn't win. He reminded to cover how embarrassed he was being read so easily. Shikamaru released Akamaru and focused on Kiba, forcing the Inuzuka to place his own claws to his neck. Funny thing about being armed against a Nara, he reminded in turn. Alright, I get it, you win, Kiba conceded morosely. In response to his confessed defeat, the shadow retreated. Asuma's smirk mirrored his students. There it is, Shikamaru-kun is a real genius at strategy. One mistake, and you're in his shadow, he praised proudly. I've still yet to pull a win against him in shogi, he recalled. Kurenai sighed, but she was glad Kiba didn't seem too upset, about as annoyed as expected to miss out on the finals, but not too broken up. Naruto stared at the unfamiliar name next to his own, Isshin. His opponent was one of the Aim Genin, the bulkier one. His ninjato was arguably just a katana. The blonde Uzumaki wondered if he should use his weapons. People didn't tend to survive the Nokojira Boko, and it was meant for the inhuman monstrosities, not fighting equals. The boy quelled the rising thought that no one in the room was truly his equal anymore. They were all still mortal while he could not die. Naruto glanced down at the metal he had distorted with his grip and was reminded of the other advantages. Even if Orochimaru messed with the Fuin holding the kitsune, it didn't make much difference. Isshin lifted his hat to glare down at Naruto. So you're the one who killed Mubi and messed up Kaguri's leg? He asked as he tossed the hat aside. Naruto took a second to recall that fight in the forest. How did you already learn about that? He asked. Oboro told us before we got here, Isshin responded as he unsheathed his sword. Naruto sighed and gripped his weapon in his right hand. They attacked us, he excused. You expect that excuse to fly when you reek of death and use a weapon like that? Isshin snapped. Hate interrupted with a cough. I didn't say start yet. He reminded the two eager genin. Both of them stared at him. Okay, begin, he said with a bit less enthusiasm than the other fights. Isshin made up for it with more enthusiasm as he charged and swung his blade. Naruto hopped back, but his opponent chased and gave no openings for the blonde to attack. The Konoha genin realized he would need to force an opening and clashed Nokojira Boko's sawed edge against the ninjato. Sparks flew before the Aim genin leaped back. Naruto gave chase, but Isshin had felt the strength the young blonde had. What in the world kind of jutsu is that? He asked curiously. Huh? Naruto asked, Nokojira jutsu? He asked for clarification. No, idiot, Isshin snapped. How are you enhancing your strength like that? He asked. Naruto's face went blank. He had no explanation for that. He had no jutsu that could enhance strength like that. I'm not, he confessed after a moment. Isshin frowned. That's impossible. Even if you're not using a jutsu, then you must be using chakra in some way, he reasoned. Your frame is not large enough to actually put out the force you just used, he pointed out. Naruto shrugged. I'm an Uzumaki, he excused. Quit trying to figure me out, just fight me or give up. He decided to try and pretend he was playing up an intimidation tactic. Isshin narrowed his eyes, those slit pupils too, he muttered. No doubt about it, you're dangerous, he muttered. Then he held his sword in his left hand and tossed a swiftly palmed shuriken at the young blonde in an arc. Naruto dodged and the Aim genin leaped at him. The older boy swung his ninjato, and then the younger lifted his saw-toothed weapon to deflect the attack by extending the blade. As Isshin retreated, the younger genin leaped and shifted the angle of his swing, but to Naruto's surprise, the saw-toothed back edge of his extended weapon was struck by a parry that slammed it into the ground. Isshin followed up with a thrust aimed precisely for Naruto's throat. The blonde pulled away in a panic. His left arm coming up smacked the metal on the back of his glove against the blade to knock it away even as it dug into his neck. The young blonde covered the injury with his left hand as he lifted his right to yank his weapon free, stepped in under the guard of his opponent, and snapped his weapon shut as he swung his right arm to the left. Ishin cried out as he leaped away from the pain of a saw-toothed weapon ripping open his side. It was a deep and nasty injury, but he had drawn blood as well. "Victory is mine," he declared. Naruto swallowed thickly. He tasted blood and he could feel it being pushed down by saliva as his body healed. "No, it isn't," he denied. "Wadash? I stabbed you in the neck." Ishin snapped with wide eyes. He looked at the blood on the end of his blade to confirm he had indeed scored a hit, then looked to the blonde with an expression that conveyed a blend of bewilderment and offended indignation. "Just a scratch," Naruto bluffed, but he did not move his left hand from the injury. "Yours is worse," he insisted. Hade coughed. Are you both fit to continue?" he asked. "Yes." Both genin answered in unison as Ishin glared at Naruto. The blonde's gaze, however, kept alternating between the injury he dealt and straying around the arena. Lee frowned when he noticed his white-eyed teammate scoff. "What is it, Niji-san?" he asked. Niji shook his head. "That blonde kid can't even meet the glare of his opponent. His mind is elsewhere. It's probably pure luck he survived that." The white-eyed boy answered. "How scatterbrained do you need to be lack focus in such a crucial moment?" He muttered in disbelief with a shake of his head. Ishin lunged as he lifted his sword with both hands and swung down at the younger genin's left shoulder. Naruto stepped back on his left foot as he readied his weapon for the counter, but was startled by the blade of the ninjato sinking into his shoulder from a sudden thrust. Reflexively, Naruto released his neck and grabbed the blade. To everyone's surprise, that actually worked. The short blonde genin yanked the ninjato from his shoulder, and then pulled Ishin in to rake his saw-toothed blade up the back of his left forearm. The aim genin yelled in pain as he pulled away with a twist that forced his blade free of Naruto's grip. "Are you trying to kill me or something?" Naruto asked dryly as he covered his latest injury with his injured left hand. He hoped his neck injury had healed up enough that he wasn't obviously inhuman. Ishin gripped his ninjato with both hands as he grit his teeth. "If I can," he confirmed before he charged with a war cry and swung furiously. Naruto deflected the attack off his own weapon, but instead of pulling back, Ishin attacked again from a different angle. Naruto didn't consider it odd to take a cut instead of stepping back, even as he was cut along his right arm and both shoulders, defending against the lethal barrage of steel. Eventually Ishin tired and his footing faltered. Naruto capitalized on it, and with a flourish he swung his extending blade up and over the attack of his opponent, as he smacked his opponent's ninjato aside with the Kyomiai Supaka on his left arm with a sharp ringing sound. It wasn't until the cleaving edge of Nokojiriboko slammed deep into Ishin's left shoulder that Naruto realized what he was doing. He had not intended to kill his opponent, but it had been the easiest and fastest swing. Regardless of intent or instinct, blood sprayed over Naruto, and he visibly relaxed as he basked in the brief red shower. Niji's eyes widened in surprise. He had been watching closely in case he needed to fight Ishin in a later round, but he realized what was weird. Naruto did not fight with discipline or focus. There was plenty of wasted energy in the movements. But despite this, the young blonde boy with slit pupils moved in a way that set alarm bells ringing in his head. Kiba shivered but didn't want to speak up. There was now no doubt the blonde genin was comfortable with killing. He cast a concerned glance at Hinata, but she just looked at Naruto with worry and concern. Shino adjusted his shades as his Kakashi relayed information to him. "Interesting," he murmured. Ino frowned. "Wait," she spoke up. "Wasn't Naruto getting his ass handed to him?" "What happened?" she asked. "I didn't think I looked away," she muttered. "Naruto wasn't losing," Shikamaru pointed out. "I knew he was tough, but this is something else." He continued with a shake of his head. "Naruto won because despite taking more damage, his opponent was the one who got tired first." He explained. Naruto only needed 3 clean hits to win compared to the multiple smaller cuts Naruto sustained. What's weird is that he didn't get tired from blood loss since that neck wound bled pretty bad. Asuma nodded in agreement with Shikamaru's assessment, as did a few jonin. The remaining aimed genin was simply glaring at Naruto as the blonde withdrew his weapon from the corpse of his teammate. As the blonde genin ascended the stairs, he was met by Hinata at the top. "See, congratulations on winning," she said nervously, holding a small container. "I wanted to give you this ointment for your cuts," she said, feeling a little guilty to still be going through with it despite the fatality. The only actual fatality during the preliminaries so far too, despite some close calls. Naruto looked at the offered container of ointment in bewilderment. He didn't need it, and he had no idea why someone would try to give him a gift. After perhaps a moment too long, the blonde's brain finished processing and he accepted the ointment. "Thanks, Hinata-chan," he said with a nervous smile, more grateful that she was being nice to him despite his blood-splattered state than anything to do with ointment he didn't actually need. Hinata's entire face lit up with joy at the gratitude. The demeanor of Hinata Hyuga dropped to the floor when the scoreboard showed the next match pit her against Niji Hyuga. The girl felt her stomach drop with her mood. She thought she might have a chance at the third phase, but she felt as if her hopes were already dashed. Naruto registered the names a moment late. Your turn, Hinata-chan," he realized. "I hope you win," he added. He figured cheering her on was the least he could do in return for the ointment. Hinata felt a lot more confident at those words and went down to meet her cousin, but that confidence faltered as she got down there. Kurenai frowned with concern. She knew enough of the Hyuga girl's home life to be concerned about the outcome of this fight. "To think we'd fight each other here, Hinata-sama," Niji greeted coldly, formal and clipped with a blank face. "Niji-nai-sama," Hinata greeted hesitantly and refused to meet his eyes. "Family fighting family, huh?" Sakura asked, having bandaged her forehead again by now. "Must be rough," she mused. "Well," Lee began, "normally yes, but relations between the two different houses of the Hyuga clan are strained." He tried to explain. Certain things were done in the past to protect their Kekkei Genkai, things decided by the main branch to the detriment of the branch house, so there's some bad blood. He wasn't sure of all the details himself. Naruto frowned, focusing on Hinata. He could see she looked nervous to be fighting the older Hyuga. What bothered Naruto more was that Niji was glaring at the girl who refused to meet his eyes. "Well, please begin the match when ready," Hate announced with yet another cough. Before that, Niji spoke up. "There is something I must point out to Hinata-sama," he continued. "You are not cut out to be a shinobi. Withdraw from the match," he said curtly. Naruto's eye twitched as he reminded himself to set aside his wrath. "You're all sweetness and light. You may try to act like you approve of Naruto's victory, but I can tell his methods disturbed you. You're a peacemaker, not a troublemaker, easily led and not a leader," he continued, and Hinata averted her eyes. "And you have no self-confidence. You have an inferiority complex, so I know you'd have been more comfortable staying at the genin level, but applicants must take the test in teams of 3 and you couldn't let your teammates down. The truth is, your participation has been reluctant from the start, hasn't it?" he asked. "And no," Hinata denied with a stammer. "You're wrong. I really wanted to change that about myself," she said as she looked down sadly. "So, of my own volition," she tried to continue. "Hinata-sama," Niji interrupted, his choice of honorific conflicting with his attitude towards her. "You're the sheltered little baby of the main branch, aren't you?" he asked. "What?" Hinata asked in surprise. "A leopard never changes its spots," Niji continued. "A failure is always a failure, and a weak personality won't become strong." He lectured, and Naruto found it harder and harder to swallow his anger. It's precisely because of that unchanging nature of humankind that differences between people are born. He continued, and the blonde boy knew from experience he was wrong. It's why we've coined terms like elite and failure. It doesn't matter who you are. We're all judged on the basis of our looks, our intelligence, our talents, or our personalities. Just as we judge others in turn. Yes, it's a form of discrimination, and the factors it's based on don't change. We have no choice. We must live within the boundaries set for us by the judgments of others. It's as unchangeable as the fact I'm from the branch house and you of the main house. Naruto realized exactly what to say to prove him wrong, but screaming about how he could make Kage Bunshin didn't seem like a good idea in the moment. So he racked his brain for a more obvious change, but it seemed he was the solution to his own problem because Hinata looked at him and seemed to swell with confidence. The fact the young Hyuga girl was encouraged by the sight of a short blonde boy absolutely drenched in drying blood with slit pupils and a vicious-looking weapon was a concern for Kurenai. Hinata finally met Niji's eyes but flinched at the glare waiting. I've seen through plenty with this Byakugan, and so I know, this courage of yours is a bluff. He accused, in the truest, deepest parts of your heart, you're desperate to run away from here right now. He added. And no. I really want to, Hinata tried to deny. You can't fool my eyes. Niji interrupted again as the veins around his eyes bulged to signify he'd activated his Byakugan. Just now, to escape my stare, you averted your eyes. Glancing towards the upper left is a signal you recalled a past experience, one that brought you pain. When you subsequently glanced to your lower right, it indicated you were envisioning physical and mental agony. In other words, you recalled previous experiences, and based upon those memories you imagined the outcome of this match. He explained, you foresaw your own defeat. He snapped with a glare and Hinata flinched. Even now, he continued, as you bring your arms up as if to shield yourself, you indicate your desire to put a wall between us, to create some distance from me. He continued to break down the psychology of her subtle movements. You subconsciously beg me to come no further, to peer no deeper, because everything I've said had been right on target. In addition, the way you're touching your lip is another of those tender, intimate behaviors that expresses the agitation in your heart. He continued mercilessly as Hinata's eyes watered and her breathing became harder. It's a defensive reflex, an attempt to ease your own anxieties and doubts. It's completely clear, whether you admit it or not, that you are aware that you can never change yourself. Throughout the speech, Naruto tried to contain himself, but seeing Hinata becoming visibly distressed set something off inside his brain. The blonde decided he didn't like it. Hinata-chan, quit letting him talk to you like that. The proctor already said you could start, you know, he exclaimed. Hinata jolted out of the mental state Niji was trying to put her in at the demand from the blonde. She took a deep breath and steeled herself before taking a stance as veins bulged around her eyes. Niji scowled but matched her stance. Naruto wondered if the Byakugan was painful to use. It looked stressful at the least from how much the veins around the eyes seemed to throb. Then the two Vyuga clashed, their hands blurring into a dance against each other. So that's Juken, Sakura muttered. Hinata never did participate in taijutsu much in the academy, she recalled. The Hyuga are pretty protective of this style. Ino commented, it's prettier than I heard. She added. Beauty aside, you can visibly see how much chakra they're throwing into each attack. Shikamaru commented on the yellow haze in the air around the palm strikes of the two genin. That messes up your internals, right? He asked. Guy nodded. While taijutsu like mine or Likuin's is referred to as Goken because of the physical trauma, Juken leaves only bruises on the skin because it damages the internals directly by attacking the Kirakukai with chakra. He explained, this can cause pretty serious damage, and there's no real guard against it either. You either deflect or dodge. Can you block it with a blade? Naruto asked what he felt was a fair question, and everyone looked at him like he was the weird one. I suppose that might work, Guy confessed. Putting a solid object between yourself and the attack does tend to work for most things. He mused as the fight continued. Niji said, deflecting Hinata's attacks and grabbed her next strike by the wrist with his right hand before sliding her sleeve up with his left. The small bruises there startled the kunoichi into widening her eyes. You've been dash? She realized but was interrupted. That's right, Niji interrupted mostly because he was annoyed he needed to point it out in the first place. My eyes can see tenketsu. Of course I'd hit them. He clarified. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. Seeing them is one thing, not that the Sharingan can see tenketsu that I'm aware of, but hitting them in the middle of combat at those speeds is something else. He commented. Niji released Hinata's wrist. This fight is over, he declared confidently. Hinata herself could find little reason to argue. With her tenketsu sealed, she could not actually use Juken. Her taijutsu was crippled and she wouldn't be able to use ninjutsu either. The girl stared at the marks on her arm as if doing so might make them go away. Naruto frowned. Why is he saying the fight is over? He asked rhetorically. Hinata-chan can still stand and has weapons, right? He pointed out. The girl tensed and Niji smirked. You're more stupid than you look if you think she has what it takes to pull a blade on someone, he mocked. Hinata scowled at the insult and, emboldened by Naruto's words, pulled out a kunai. Kurenai was surprised by this as she assumed Niji had said something correct that time. Niji's smirk fell into a frown as he glared at Hinata. If you use that, be prepared to have it used against you. He warned darkly, and the kunoichi flinched away from the intensity of his glare and the threat behind his words. Hinata considered dropping the kunai and giving up, but she recalled Naruto's fight. The blonde boy had been unflinching in the face of an actual sword, let alone the threat of a knife. So the Hyuga kunoichi took a deep breath and activated her Byakugan again. I can still fight you, Hinata insisted as she took a ready stance. Niji scowled and rushed the younger genin. He feinted with his right hand, and when Hinata's kunai went for it, he deftly grabbed her right wrist in his left hand and pulled her off balance. Then the boy took her kunai from her with his right hand and slid the blade down her wrist towards the elbow. Naruto's blood went cold as the smell of Hinata's blood hit his nostrils. His pupils dilated and his hackles raised, but a sharp ache in his navel stopped him from completely losing control of his temper. Now the battle is over, Niji declared. Without medical attention you will die. He clarified as he released Hinata and dropped her bloodied kunai. Hate nodded. Hinata Hyuga is unable to continue due to a serious injury. Niji Hyuga wins, he declared quickly so he could wave the Area Ninja over. Hinata stared at her kunai, blade red with her own blood, as the Area Ninja approached to give her first aid and ask if she was well enough to watch the remaining fights, but the girl was turning pale and seemed to be on the verge of fainting mid-treatment. Kurenai was beside her with the Area Ninja, a red-eyed glare on the boy who had injured her student. Naruto clenched his teeth in a vain attempt to stop his head from spinning. His stomach felt like a bonfire was trying to consume him from within. His body shook in protest to being held back from the violence he was built for. He needed to move, or he would lose control. So the blonde made a decision and Naruto hopped the railing. Something to say about this? Niji dared. Naruto ignored him and approached the fallen, bloody kunai. Hinata was already passed out but stable by the time he got there, so he crouched down and picked it up. I'm going to ask Hinata-chan if she wants this back later, he said, but first I'm going to ask her if I can put it in your neck for her. He directed at Niji. Kurenai knew that Hinata would like the excuse to see Naruto, so she let the blonde hold on to her student's kunai for now, even though she could guess the Hyuga kunoichi would be against his suggestion. The Area Ninja finished their emergency patch-up and took the now unconscious girl away to recover. Well, aren't you fired up? Niji asked mockingly. For what reason are you butting your nose in where it doesn't belong? He questioned. Naruto met Niji's eyes with a glare. You made your business public and the way you treat others and talk pisses me off, he answered. So unless you can force me not to butt in, I'm butting in, he decided. Niji scoffed. Uncouth mongrel, he grumbled under his breath as he returned to the balcony. Naruto wiped Hinata's blood from the kunai on what little clean patch of clothing he had left as he returned to his team and put the kunai in his tool pouch to keep it separate from his own. Soon enough the second last fight was up on the digital board, Rock Lee vs. Gaara. Gaara was already in the arena with Asuna Shunshin, eager to finally have his own fight. Lee looked excited to finally have his own fight coming up. Kiba looked worried for the other Konoha genin. Sakura wondered what the deal was with the gourd. Lee, Guy announced, I've noticed something crucial most people may have overlooked. He told his student in a teacherly tone. Yes, sir, Lee responded, snapping to attention and saluting. That gourd of his is quite suspicious, Guy pointed out as if it wasn't the most obvious thing about the Suna genin. I see, Lee answered, quickly taking out a notepad and pencil to write that down. Stop taking notes, Guy scolded. You won't have time to consult them in the heat of battle, he pointed out. Lee wrote that down as well. I see, he answered. Sakura wondered if the boy with the bowl cut would be all right. All right. Go get him, Lee, Guy ordered boisterously. Yes, sir, Lee responded with equal gusto before he leaped down to face his opponent. Facing you so soon, it makes me very happy, he told Gaara with a smile. Naruto frowned with worry since Lee seemed like a nice guy, but Gaara just smelled like blood, rot, and death. Lee opened with the beginnings of a kick combo, but he pulled back at the barrier of sand that interposed itself between his attack and his target. Gaara didn't even flinch as the sand moved to counterattack, but the Konoha genin was fast and evaded the attack. Naruto's eyes widened at the sight of the sand. The scent of blood was strongest in the sand, like the sand had been drenched in it. He had no idea how he would overcome that. He wasn't sure if his weapon would go through or not. Kiba seemed more on edge too, wondering if he should warn Lee and feeling guilty that he didn't, but the idea of Gaara knowing how close their teams had gotten in the forest of death scared him into silence. Physical attacks are useless against Gaara. Kankuro spoke up. The sand forms a shield to protect his body, independent of Gaara's own will. He explained, that's why, to this day, no one has ever wounded him. He added, why is Lee only using taijutsu? Sakura wondered. He should back off, fight with ninjutsu and attack from a distance. She pointed out. It's not that Lee won't use ninjutsu, Guy began, it's that he can't. He clarified, Lee has no aptitude for ninjutsu or genjutsu. He explained. Sakura was startled by that information. How has he lasted this long then? She asked as the fight continued below them and Lee backflipped away from the sand. Due to his lack of talent or ability for ninjutsu or genjutsu, he has developed his taijutsu exclusively, Guy answered as Lee jumped up onto the monument of the ram hand seal to escape Gaara's grasping, which is precisely why he can win. He declared, confusing both Kakashi and Sakura. Lee, take them off, he called out. Everyone really hoped the Jonin did not mean the spandex. Lee seemed surprised by the call-out. But Guy-sensei, you said never to remove them unless I was defending the lives of people precious to me, he argued. It's all right, Guy responded as he gave a thumbs up and a wink. I'll allow it, he declared. Lee seemed stunned for a moment before he laughed in a giddy tone, reaching under his orange leg warmers to pull out a pair of leg weights. Kakashi sighed. He should have known Guy would rely on such a sentimentally traditional kind of training. It was so sickeningly sweet, but it had its merits. Most assumed that just removing some weights wouldn't change much besides allowing him to move a bit faster. Those who understood taijutsu better knew his form would likely improve, but they wondered how much that would matter. Then the weights hit the ground and kicked up massive clouds of dust, stunning more than a few. Naruto wasn't even aware people could move with that much weight. Sakura's jaw dropped, and Kakashi realized he'd underestimated his rival a tad. Go, Lee! Guy cheered loudly, and Lee went. The boy was able to move so fast and strike so hard his blows were actually getting close to hitting Gaara. The Suna genin seemed startled as he struggled to follow the movements with his eyes. Naruto was visibly amazed and interested. It's because he had no aptitude for ninjutsu or genjutsu that Lee was able to devote all of his training, all of his focus, all of his energy purely to taijutsu. Guy explained with a proud smile, so that even if he lacked any other ninpo, he'd still be unbeatable as a taijutsu specialist. He announced proudly. Naruto frowned. Why not use bokujutsu too? He asked. Guy just continued to smile. Yes, well, he does utilize weaponry and tools when needed, of course, but taijutsu is the foundation of the physical arts, he retorted in defense of his chosen specialty. Lee finally managed to land a blow, a spinning axe kick with such speed and force that it seemed to split Gaara's cheek. The shinobi from Suna seemed especially shocked by that, as they knew not even Jonin assassins had ever landed such a solid blow. In terms of speed, Lee can't be surpassed, Guy added proudly, and Naruto was amazed since even the monsters beneath Konoha could not move quite that fast, none of the ones that he'd seen anyway, so he actually couldn't even privately refute the claim. Gaara's sand couldn't react in time, and he was getting floored by Lee soon enough. This is bad, Kankuro muttered, frowning. The puppeteer had noticed Gaara was becoming more unstable, and the face of the red-haired Sunanin cracking and falling away to reveal an insanely bloodthirsty grin beneath an encasing of sand only confirmed his concerns. Sakura frowned. That sand, so Lee-kun still hadn't fully touched him, she realized, her concern returning as Gaara covered up his gleeful expression with the sand. What is that sand? She wondered. Suna no Yoroi, Kankuro answered. If the Suna no Tate is the first part of his ultimate defense, that's the second. While the Tate moves independently of his will, The Yoroi is held tightly around him by the force of his own will," he explained. Naruto frowned, wondering where the weak point was. What Kankuro wasn't telling them was that the Suna no Yoroi was a last line of defense. It required a constant expenditure of chakra and made the young genin far heavier, and thus forcing him to expend more effort just to move. "Is that all?" Gaara asked, as Lee had taken a moment to pause and consider the ultimate defense of his opponent. The green-clad genin looked to his sensei, and, receiving the nod of approval, he loosened the bandages around his arms. Lee dashed around the Suna no Tate, the outer layer of sand protecting Gaara, before leaping to skid beneath the other genin and kick him up into the air. The taijutsu specialist followed through with further kicks to launch him higher despite the weight of the Suna no Yoroi. Guy prayed for his student's success, knowing that Lee was putting even more strain on his body than the jutsu he was about to use usually required by using consecutive kicks. Finally, Lee wrapped the Suna genin up in his bandages and spun with his opponent, as the two fell out of the air to hit the ground with his omote range, the Konoha genin leaping away from the impact. There was a moment of stunned silence before the Suna no Yoroi cracked and fell apart to reveal the shell was empty. "Impossible!" Guy exclaimed. "When did he dash?" The man wondered. "When you shut your eyes in prayer," Kakashi pointed out. During those consecutive kicks, Lee hesitated when he winced in pain, which let Gaara use that shell of his for a kawarimi. He explained for the benefit of those who had not seen it. Gaara rose up from a mound of far looser sand with a chuckle before going on the attack, smashing Lee into a wall with a blast of his sand. Then sending a wave of more sand to crash against the boy to slam him further into the wall, licking his lips as he toyed with his opponent. "Why doesn't Lee-kun dodge?" Sakura asked with a worried expression and tone. "The jutsu Lee just used puts massive strain on his body," Guy answered quietly, equally as worried but far more tempered. "Fundamentally, it's a kinjutsu," Kakashi clarified, using that level of high-speed taijutsu puts strain on the body. Right now Lee is likely in incredible pain and his muscles are weakened by the backlash, he explained. Naruto noticed something. "He's smiling," he pointed out. Guy smiled. "Lee is smiling because he's found his second wind," he answered. "The lotus of Konoha blooms twice," he announced proudly. "For you it ends here," Gaara told his opponent, done with toying with the taijutsu specialist. Lee continued to smile. "One way or another, this move will be the last," he agreed. Kakashi's visible eye widened as he realized what Guy's words meant. "You didn't?" he asked, hoping he misinterpreted. "On the contrary, I did," Guy retorted calmly, focused on watching his pupil fight. Kakashi frowned under his mask. "So, that kid, who is still just a genin, can actually open the Hashimen?" he questioned, narrowing his eye at his self-proclaimed rival. "Yes," Guy confirmed, "that's right." He added somberly, "Lee has the talent for it," he explained. "No matter how much talent he has, you taught him something incredibly dangerous." Kakashi snapped suddenly. "The Omote Range is one thing, but the Yura Range is not the kind of thing you teach a genin," he argued. Guy crossed his arms. "I am confident in his ability," he retorted as he watched his students set up the jutsu they were speaking of. "He's the only one of my genin to do so," he clarified. "How many can he open?" Kakashi asked, recognizing that Lee had recovered by opening Kuman. "He's up to the 5th gate," Guy answered, and if Kakashi didn't have his mask on he'd be openly gawking, stunned that a genin got that far. Naruto was lost. "What's Hashimen?" he asked. "The Hashimen are limiters placed on the body that must be released in preparation for the Yura Range," Guy answered simply as the Jonin of Team 7 lifted his hitai to reveal his own Sharingan. "Yes," Kakashi concurred. "At 8 different points along the Kirakukai there are places the chakra nodes converge." He explained in more detail: Kaiman, Kuman, Simon, Shomon, Taman, Kaimon, Kaiman, and Shimon. He listed, these are called Hashimen. They maintain limits on the amount of chakra flowing through the body, limits that the range forcibly overrides, enabling the user to draw upon strength many times their usual level, even if the body is destroyed in the process. Incidentally, the Omote Range only opens Kaiman. "What about the Yura Range?" Sakura asked, becoming increasingly concerned. Opening the Kaimon frees the user of mental inhibitions. Guy began. The opening of Kumon boosts strength, and with the Simon open the Yura range can begin. He explained. Sakura grit her teeth. Lee Kun hurt himself so much with Omote range already. If he keeps going, she trailed off. Kakashi nodded. A truly double-edged weapon. He confirmed, anyone who opens all of the Hashimen will enter a state called Hashimen Tanko no Jin. They'll have the power to surpass even a Kage, but the strain will kill them. He explained. Naruto made a mental note that such a state would be a perfect final trump card for him, since he was immortal anyway. The blonde wondered how he'd get anyone to teach him such a kinjutsu though. He'd stolen the one he already knew after all. Lee opened the Simon and his skin turned bright red, followed by the Shomon, and his veins bulged as a bit of blood dripped down his nose from a burst vessel and his sinus from the strain. Niji activated his Byakugan, watching curiously as the genin he considered a failure moved so fast even he could barely track it. Gaara was swiftly being kicked around the arena by Lee, the Konoha genin barely perceptible to those with dojutsu as Gaara's Suna no Yoroi was peeled away and the Suna genin himself was juggled out of reach of his sand by the high-speed taijutsu combination. Finally Lee wrapped his opponent up and opened Tamen, then knocked Gaara away again before using his bandages to pull the other genin back to him and deliver a combined palm thrust and kick with such force that everyone in the audience felt it. What the hell is up with these Konoha shinobi? The jonin of the aim cell muttered, hiding his bewilderment expertly despite the situation. However, Gaara's gourd became sand to cushion his landing, so the boy was not knocked unconscious by being slammed against the ground as Lee had intent. Lee himself could barely stand after his performance, too slow to evade his left arm and leg being caught in the sand as Gaara lifted his right hand towards the taijutsu specialist. Kiba and Shino recognized what was about to happen, and the Inuzuka winced in sympathy as the sand suddenly imploded around the limbs it had trapped in response to Gaara clenching his fist. The sand moved again to grab at Lee fully, but it was knocked away by Guy as the jonin leaped to interfere in the match to save his pupil. Gaara glared at Guy as he stood up, then winced and clutched his head in pain. Why are you helping him? He questioned, failing to understand. He's my precious protege. Guy answered, unaware that such words were beyond Gaara's current understanding, the Suna genin unable to comprehend caring about someone enough to protect them. Gaara's sand returned to the shape of a gourd and encased him once more. Forget it. He retorted as he turned to leave, annoyed that his kill had been interrupted. The audience were all surprised when Lee stood once more despite his broken leg. Gaara turned back to see what the commotion was. Guy frowned. Lee, it's over. He began only to halt as he realized the boy was unconscious. The eyes of the jonin watered and he hugged his broken pupil, impressed that the boy had enough resolve to stand while unconscious and proud that he could attempt a taijutsu stance while out cold from muscle memory. Naruto considered his opponents in the finals, 3 of whom he definitely wanted to punish. He glanced at Kankuro. Technically he had nothing against the puppeteer, but the older boy was on the same Suna cell as 2 of the 3 he really wanted to hurt. Well, there's no need for the scoreboard, Hade called out after the arena was cleared. Choji Akimichi and Hanbei, please come down for the final match of the preliminary, he requested. The final aim genin moved down without hesitation, but Choji frowned since the last few matches, actually a lot of them really, had been a bit brutal for his liking. The only one that hadn't resulted in injury had been between Shikamaru and Kiba, either of which had tried particularly hard to hurt the other. Choji recalled one match had even been an actual fatality, and surprisingly it wasn't Gaara. The Akimichi glanced towards Naruto nervously. Asuma sighed, if you win, I'll buy all-you-can-eat barbecue, he promised. Choji moved with a speed few knew him capable of, and the genin stoically faced the aim genin a moment later with fire in his eyes. Hade coughed into his fist. Sorry, he apologized at the 2 genin who stiffened and made to move on the attack from the false start. Begin, he declared for real. Choji made a hand seal, but his opponent crossed the distance between them before he could mold chakra and slammed his left elbow into the chubby genin's stomach with a low stance. Then he thrust his left palm into the stomach he just hit with a shift of his stance towards the Akimichi. The Konoha genin slid back, fell to his knees, and dry heaved. Hanbei unsheathed his ninjato, held it in both hands, and swung down at Choji's left shoulder with a step towards the downed boy. The Akimichi fell back as he avoided a mortal blow with a quickly palmed kunai in his right hand, but the ninjato still cut against his left forearm that he'd raised with his guard. Hanbei pulled back, lined up his ninjato, and thrust with a low long hop towards Choji, who failed to defend against that as the blade went through the left arm of the Konoha genin despite his attempts to knock the attack further off course. Hate was there with a summa to separate the two then, as it became clear the aim genin was out for blood. Iria Ninja approached to heal Choji's left arm, and unlike Hinata he managed to avoid passing out although he seemed embarrassed. Hanbei pulled away obediently, and sheathed his sword in a passive stance. I wait so long for my turn, and my opponent isn't even the right caliber, he grumbled. Hate eyed the aim genin warily. Will the victors of each match come down now? We're about to announce the matchups for the third phase. He called, and each genin who won came down. Naruto was the bloodiest, followed by Niji with a spray of Hinata's blood up his right arm and sleeve. Gaara smelled the most like blood. Shikamaru stayed as far from the Suna genin as he could. Temari had a smile that was proud and confident, while Kankuro was smirking arrogantly. Kakashi stood in Sasuke's place. I'll make sure he's ready for the finals, he assured. A few jonin frowned at the preferential treatment, but the Hokage and Enko understood that it was needed in this case. Sakura was just worried about her teammates. Then she realized her entire team had actually made it to the final round. Shino stood patiently and impassively. No one could get a read on what he was thinking. To those of you who won your bouts and have qualified for the third phase of the Chunin exams, I congratulate you, Hate said formally, as Hiruzen considered the victors. 6 from Konohagakure, 3 of whom were part of the same cell, 3 from Sunagakure who were all in the same cell, and 1 aim genin. Hiruzen Sarutobi wondered if Hanzo would show up, but he doubted the man would show up personally even if one of the genin of the 4 cells he'd sent made it to the finals. It would be nerve-wracking if he did though. The Shinobi Gashira no Amigakure no Sato was a terrifying man in his prime, and the Sandaime would be a hypocrite to underestimate an old man. So, they're all yours, Hokage-sama, Hate said, stepping aside as his words broke the wizened Sarutobi from his musings. Yes, Hiruzen acknowledged as he stepped forward. Well then, starting now I shall explain the finals. He began as he adjusted his hat. As I mentioned earlier, your final battles will be conducted in front of everyone. Each of you represents the respective battle strengths of your lands, he said, and a few of the genin glanced nervously at Gaara. So we want you to exhibit and fully showcase your talents. Thus the finals will commence 1 month from now, he explained. Naruto's eyes widened at the sheer amount of time he had. With that much time he had no doubt he could reach a level that Niji wouldn't be able to keep up with. Gaara, however, had a different idea. Why wait? He asked, his tone gravelly with aggravation. We call this the requisite preparation period. Hiruzen responded to the young auburn-haired boy. It's a period of time that allows us to relay who is competing in the final phase to the various daimyo and other nobles or dignitaries who wish to witness it, including leaders of other hidden villages. And it also serves as a period for you applicants to prepare after the preliminaries today, he explained. Kankuro was growing annoyed with the old man constantly beating around the bush. I still don't get it. What do you mean? He asked with an aggravated expression. You must prepare to understand the enemy and yourself, Hiruzen answered calmly. During this period you can analyze the intelligence you have gathered on your opponents during these preliminaries, and use it to increase your chances of victory. Normally the tournament phase of the Chunin selection examinations is conducted as fights against a potentially unknown opponent, but during these preliminaries some of you may have revealed all your cards against your rivals. Some of you may have even been injured against comparatively strong opponents, he continued with a look to Kakashi, implying he meant Sasuke, while others may have pushed themselves too hard. He added with a meaningful glance at Naruto, in order to make the finals fair, we give you this month to rest and prepare, but also to take time to practice and perhaps even develop some new tricks. He explained, so with that covered I'd like to let you all go, but we have one last thing to do before the finals. There are slips of paper in the box Anko-san is holding, each of you take one. Anko stepped up to the genin with the box. Line up kids, 1 per person, she said, and soon each of the 10 genin had a slip of paper with a number on it. Now that everybody has one, please read out the numbers you have one at a time, starting from the left. Hiruzen instructed, curious as to how this would play out. 7. Shikamaru responded lazily. 6. Shino responded flatly. 2. Niji was equally as toneless. Sakura looked at her number 10. She informed. Sasuke-kun got 4. Kakashi said cheerfully as if that wasn't a bad omen. 1. Naruto declared with a glare towards Niji. 9. Hanbei held up the paper to show he was not lying. 5. Kankuro said with a confident smirk. 8. Temari said her own number with little fanfare. 3. Gaara said, fulfilling the ill omen of 4 being drawn by the Uchiha. Hiruzen nodded. Then we shall tell you the brackets for the final tournament now, he announced. Ibiki-san, if you would? He requested, and the man turned around his clipboard. The first match would be Naruto Uzumaki vs Niji Hyuga, then Sasuke Uchiha vs Gaara, Kankuro vs Shino Aburame, Shikamaru Nara vs Temari, and finally Hanbei vs Sakura Haruno in the first round alone. With this, you all free to rest up and prepare for your matches. Hiruzen announced, we're all done unless anyone has any questions. He said. I have one. Temari spoke up, if this is a tournament, does that mean only one person becomes Chunin? She asked curiously. Hiruzen chuckled, no, there will be many judges. Not just myself, but the Kazekage, as well as advisors and other village heads. He explained, during this tournament we will be determining who has displayed that they deserve to be considered Chunin depending on how these matches go. Even those who lose in the first round could become Chunin. So, all 10 of us could become Chunin? Temari asked incredulously. Yes. Hiruzen answered simply, however, it is also possible that none of you become Chunin. He added sternly, the advantage of winning each bout is more chances to show what you're made of against a variety of enemies. He explained. Chapter 16. Making Plans and Decisions. Naruto and Karen Uzumaki sat across from the Sandaime Hokage. The red-haired girl still had the white Iranian fatigues on, but the blonde boy had been allowed to change his clothes after another shower before the meeting. Also present was Anko Mitarashi for reasons Naruto did not understand yet. He actually couldn't even guess the reason unless it was something to do with the fact he'd met and adopted Karen during her phase of the Chunin selection exams. Hiruzen tapped ash from his pipe into a wooden ashtray. First of all, I commend you, Karen-san. You did well during your probationary period for the preliminaries. He praised, I must confess, an Uzumaki with medical experience is quite the boon, and for Naruto-kun I imagine this would be quite a boon, however there is a matter of security. He lectured, therefore for any medical checkups I ask that another area ninja be present. Naruto tensed and shook his head subtly. Karen picked up on it. There are clan secrets to consider, she pointed out. Hiruzen sighed deeply. I do not wish to get into this, but the Uzumaki do not actually hold clan status in the modern era. He reminded the Kunoichi, we're willing to accept you, but there must be compromise here for Naruto-kun's sake. Naruto scowled, I'm right here, and I want privacy, family privacy. He clarified, I don't care about clan stuff, but I won't let any secrets hurt Konohagakure no Sato. He said firmly, his meaning deeper than the current topic of discussion. Hiruzen shook his head. Privacy will be allowed, of course, but I will not authorize Karen-san to prescribe anything or perform any surgery or treatments related to normal injuries without an area ninja of my choosing present. He insisted. Naruto considered that he healed injuries naturally, so those situations would likely never come up. Plus, he didn't think he needed any prescriptions. Okay. He agreed, although Karen was still frowning at the lack of prescriptions. Now then, Hiruzen continued, the next matter is of Kusugakure no Sato. Your team were less than thrilled, and treaties are being threatened by this. He warned, I will try to play mediator, but what can you say of your former shinobi Gashira? He asked. Karen frowned but had expected it. He's scary and vicious, she said bluntly, but I think he'd do anything to keep his village afloat, she assured. Very well, Hiruzen nodded at the description. I can work with that. He decided before he began packing his pipe. I believe Anko-san had a question as well. He mused. Enko's entire body language went from passive observer to interrogator like a switch had been flipped. Why did your blood taste so good, and why do I want more? She asked bluntly. Naruto panicked. Because you're crazy. He decided on the answer. I had a headache until after I had your blood. I was planning on treating it with dango, Enko began to explain, but your blood fixed it. She insisted, which didn't help argue against the idea she was crazy. Karen's eyes lit up with inspiration. That's an Uzumaki thing, she clarified. Some of us can impart some of our vitality through blood. She explained, then she hesitated and showed the faded scar of a bite on her shoulder. That's what Kusa had me using my abilities for as an area ninja. She confessed hesitantly. Naruto bristled at the implication and subconsciously filed Kusa under distrust and dislike in his brain. Hiruzen frowned for similar reasons. Enko just looked confused. You can just heal people with your blood? She asked incredulously. It's not as simple as that, Karen snapped, and also you aren't supposed to crave it, and just licking up some of his spilled blood shouldn't do it. She confessed and Naruto's heart sank. So that must all be Kitsune magic, right? Which means we should avoid using Naruto-kun's healing blood? She asked, then she turned pale. I'd rather not use mine either, it really drains me. She muttered. Hiruzen nodded. He was wise enough to guess that such an ability was derived from the overflowing life force of the Uzumaki, and that overusing such abilities would only lead to shortened lifespans. Very well, Enko-san, please keep your blood cravings to yourself, he ordered. Enko pouted and crossed her arms contritely but nodded in agreement. Naruto never thought he would be so uncomfortable to have an older woman lusting after him, but he supposed he never expected the older woman to be lusting after his blood specifically. The blonde immediately mentally corrected himself that the thought of older women lusting after him had never occurred to him, not even when practicing Oiroge no Jutsu. He was getting better at lying to himself too. Karen sighed with relief. Thank you, Hokage-sama. She said gratefully, it is an honor to join Konohagakure no Sato and rejoin with what is left of my splintered clan. She added with a formal bow. Naruto scratched his cheek and wondered if he was supposed to bow too. He noticed the Hokage glance at him. Thanks for this, Gigi, he said sincerely. Hiruzen smiled without taking offense since he could tell how genuine the boy was. So do you think it actually is Kitsune magic? Naruto asked quietly. The term they'd coined for the weirdness of him being the Kyubi Jinchuriki had stuck. The two Uzumaki were walking and the redhead had mentioned no one was nearby. Her chakra sensing was very useful and it set a precedent for Uzumaki having it. No idea, Karen confessed, either that or your Iryokin jutsu, but we're keeping that to ourselves, right? She asked rhetorically. The blonde nodded anyway. So that's going to have to be our excuse for everything. The issue is Mito Uzumaki probably knew and talked with the Sandaime, so we have to keep it to real Uzumaki abilities, she warned. Naruto nodded as he led them towards the hospital. Yeah, it sounds like that might not be an issue. He guessed, from the way he'd heard it, he basically had three things enhancing his vitality: innate Uzumaki physiology, Jinchuriki enhancement, and his forbidden medical technique as he called it with Karen. So the blonde Uzumaki had his innate preternatural fortitude, and two supernatural healing factors keeping him alive. Yet he still got splattered against the walls by that large monster with the antlers. Also Gaara would probably crush him if he caught him in that sand. Hopefully anything else can be explained by the Kyubi, Naruto muttered as he recalled how bestial the monsters could be, how he had grown claws. Karen frowned. I hope that specialist doesn't take too long to find us, she muttered under her breath. Naruto gave her a confused look. I mentioned Orochimaru hit you with Fuinjutsu while explaining myself, and Hokage-sama said he'd send word for a specialist, which was like 2 days ago, she clarified. The two grew silent as listening ears came closer. The Uzumaki pair went up, Karen leading the way now to the floor. Those who had been injured in the preliminaries were held. On the way up, Naruto heard frantic muttering followed by a sudden silence. When they got there, he saw why. Every member of the Rookie 9 who hadn't been injured was already there. Sakura and Ino were being interrogated by Kiba while Shino watched impassively. Ino's expression and the fact she'd been looking where Naruto and Karen would arrive clinched it. Well now, must have known we were asking about you, Kiba muttered. So what's the deal, Naruto? He asked. You smell like blood, you got slit pupils now, And Ino was glancing at you the whole preliminaries. He listed off, we all know Ino can sense chakra, and as much as I'd love to tease her, you're more of a mystery right now. Naruto was baffled that of all people it was Kiba heading this investigation, on the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. He decided it was his secret anyway, and it was the best excuse he had. Most of the people in the hall knew anyway. Sakura's eye twitched since she'd been trying to keep that secret for him. Ino was similarly exasperated. Shikamaru just sighed. Kiba was a bit taken aback. Wait, what? He asked. He did not know the context of those words. Yondaime-sama couldn't actually kill the kitsune, Sakura clarified, so Naruto is like a scroll. It's super advanced Fuinjutsu. She explained. Kiba frowned. That's hardly fair. He grumbled. We're ninja. Naruto retorted. Life isn't fair. He added. Sakura silently agreed as she guessed why Naruto was there. Sasuke-kun isn't ready for visitors yet. She recited what she'd been told. Naruto shrugged. Where's Hinata-chan's room then? He asked casually. Sakura blinked since she'd forgotten about that part of the preliminaries. Shino pointed to a door silently while Kiba was still mentally recovering from learning one of their group of 9 rookies was a literal living superweapon. Naruto entered Hinata's room and saw Kurenai seated next to the girl. Hey. He greeted, then he realized he wasn't sure how to continue. I must look kind of prophetic, saying I want to stab Niji, and then getting matched up against him in the first round. He mused jokingly to break the ice. Sakura realized the blonde was capable of romance then. Not the kind she liked though, but that didn't bother her. Ino watched with a smug smirk, prepared for the exchange to be entertaining even from the hallway. Hinata flushed in embarrassment and averted her eyes. Well, that is, she muttered, stammering over her words as she struggled to pick the right ones. She took a breath to steady herself. Please don't hate Nijinai-sama. He has his reasons for being like that. She pleaded. Naruto tensed as he agonized over the request before he finally sighed. Alright, fine, he agreed morosely as he pulled out her kunai. I'll find a non-lethal way to destroy that smug bastard. He promised instead as he flicked the kunai to hold it by the blade in a display of dexterity none of the other Konoha genin expected before he offered the handle to the original owner. Hinata accepted it with a nod. Thank you, she said gratefully, more for the promise than the return tool. After that, however, an awkward silence fell as the kunoichi stared at her kunai. The blonde noticed he hadn't done the greatest job cleaning it, unfortunately. Naruto scratched the back of his head. He got the feeling there was more he should say, but he was a little bit socially inexperienced, and unsure of what to say or do next. He wanted to go train or hunt, but he got the distinct impression he shouldn't do that yet. Ino rolled her eyes at the shy Hyuga and the socially inept Uzumaki. Nice jacket, by the way, much nicer than your old one. She commented to break the silence, and see if she could get Hinata to speak up. It is not. Naruto denied vehemently. He liked the jacket with the big ruff on the neck and he would repair it. It really is. Sakura agreed with Ino. Despite their rivalry, they both agreed the jacket had been bad. Naruto slumped at the insults. Well, I like the jacket, and I'm going to fix it, he grumbled. Just get new clothes, Karen exclaimed. You should be training or resting, not sewing. She reminded him. The blonde wondered if she realized he literally did not rest yet. They don't sell that jacket anymore. Naruto exclaimed the problem. Hinata spoke up and everyone went quiet. The eyes on her had her clam up, but she managed to continue after a moment. I could repair Naruto-kun's jacket, she offered shyly. Naruto nodded. Hey, that works. He agreed. You saw the damage. How much Ryo should I give you? He asked. Hinata deflated a little. That's fine. I have spare supplies. She denied. She hadn't meant as a service. Naruto blinked as he realized she was offering to fix his jacket for free. Seriously? He asked. The blonde was socially uneducated and stunted from his upbringing, but he had also become more observant, and supposedly the blood was helping make him smarter somehow. So when the blonde Uzumaki realized Hinata had a crush on him, he almost had a heart attack and struggled to control his reaction. Sure, I'll have some time off anyway. I don't mind. The kunoichi assured her offer was genuine. Naruto controlled his breathing. Wow, he muttered. Thanks, Hinata-chan, you're really nice, he said with a smile. he did not want to lead her on. His own heart was racing now. The girl was cute, but there was one issue. Naruto Uzumaki was a deathless monster. He wasn't even sure if he could have a normal relationship. The fact he was a Jinchuriki only added to this insecurity, and had him play the blind, oblivious fool to avoid confronting Hinata's budding feelings for him. Ino and Sakura both felt some pity for the other rookie Kunoichi. They all fell for Naruto's oblivious act, as they had no reason to think of him as insightful despite the recent revelation he held the Kyuubi no Yoko in his chakra. Hinata seemed pleased with just being called nice though and smiled shyly. "It's fine," she assured again. Should I come and pick it up tomorrow?" she asked. Naruto nodded. "Sure. I live on the second floor of the apartments 2 blocks northwest of Ichiraku Ramen," he directed, and all the rookies were pretty sure there were other landmarks around there. "My door is on the end opposite the stairs," he clarified. Sakura belatedly realized she was only now learning where Naruto lived, and it was because she was overhearing him giving directions to Hinata. She decided not to verbally comment on that. "So, I guess we're going to be neighbors," Karen mused. The Hokage had set her up in the same apartment block as Naruto, same floor even. It was oddly a vacant floor besides the blonde himself apparently. Naruto nodded. "That does make things easier," he mused as they walked down the streets of Konoha towards said apartment building. Then the blonde realized something. "So you can sense my chakra?" he asked. Karen frowned at the unexpected question. "Oh, that, yeah. I have no idea if that's an Uzumaki thing or just me. Okaken never mentioned it," she answered quietly. Naruto felt guilty for bringing it up even though he had no way to know, but he realized the other Uzumaki had known family. Another way he was completely different, although him being a ward of the Hokage did make a lot more sense with the whole Jinchuriki thing. The issue with Karen being able to sense Naruto and living nearby though was that he wanted to teleport to the depths through the dream again. That was basically how he trained. So the blonde boy would need to come up with something. I like to disappear at weird hours," he said. "I don't sleep well," he excused lamely, "just so you don't freak out if I'm not there, you know, or if I appear or disappear suddenly." He was talking too much. "I'm really good at stealth," he insisted, unable to help himself. Karen raised an eyebrow and crossed her arms. "That sounds sketchy, but fine. If you insist, I'll leave you alone after hours even if you wander off after midnight," she agreed. Naruto opened his eyes in the dream and sighed with relief. "I need to think of a way to beat Niji," he muttered to himself. His biggest issue and hurdle was the fact that he had gotten perhaps too used to fights to the death with beasts who did not care one bit about honor. Shinobi associated with the Godaikoku were supposed to have a semblance of honor, and those from clans held it to a higher pedestal. Naruto had no idea how to defeat Niji non-lethally. He was confident that in a straight fight he could just overwhelm with sheer ferocity and tear the Hyuga to shreds with Noko Jiroboko. But the thought of doing that in front of a crowd of spectators made the blonde feel sick, and his stomach tied in knots as he imagined how Hinata would react. "I need to fight him like a ninja, not a Ryoshi," Naruto muttered to himself without actually bothering to get up. There were no bugs in the grass in the dream and the ground was soft. The grass wasn't even sharp, so it was comfortable. Naruto mentally went over the jutsu he knew. Immediately he discounted Nokojira jutsu. That was something he made up to cover his weird hunting weapon. He obviously knew taijutsu, shuriken jutsu, and he was confident in his stealth. Genjutsu was a weakness he'd need to figure out, but Niji didn't seem to use them. None of the finalists for the Chunin exams did actually, not even Sakura. As for ninjutsu, he could henge with a good eye for detail. His Oiroku no Jutsu was proof of that. His Kawarimi worked sometimes, and he had Kage Bunshin. Technically he also had Taiju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, but that was Kinjutsu. Then again, Kakashi had not explicitly told him not to do it, and Lee used Kinjutsu in the preliminaries. Naruto sat up and attempted to make a regular Bunshin. It worked, but it was still static and it didn't move quite right. Why is this one ninjutsu so damned hard for me? He grumbled to himself. The doll watched silently since he was doing ninja things she knew nothing about. The blonde genin looked at the gauntlet on his left arm, the Kaomi Isupuka, a shinobi tool devised by Otogekyu no Sato and stolen by Naruto. Now that he thought about, he stole a lot of the things he used. Technically he was pretty sure no one actually owned anything he took from the depths. Naruto had tried to practice his chakra control in the dream, but he had eventually grown restless and decided to explore the depths. He avoided the antlered monster that killed him more than any other so far and explored the area around that depth level. Naruto considered testing his Kyomi Isuppaka too, but he recalled how much gunshots echoed in the tunnels beneath Konoha. He was not going to risk bringing every bloodthirsty thing in the depths hunting whatever sound his chakra would make going into it. The sounds of fighting caught his attention. The blonde knew the monsters hunted each other as much as he hunted them. It was a hellish and blood-stained place, but there was still an ecosystem. However, it was rare for the sounds of metal scraping on stone to echo without any rhythm. Naruto followed the sounds to find the old man who had first found him in the depths using the cane he carried to proper effect. The bladed whip lashed through the air as some kind of tension in the device pulled the blades through the right shoulder of his target to spray the old man in blood and stagger the beast towards him. Then he slammed the end of the cane into the chest of the staggered, desiccated thing, and transformed it back into a cane as he impaled his prey. The old man exhaled deeply and his breath fogged up the cold underground air. Yaju. Everywhere I look, nothing but Yaju. He muttered to himself as he turned. He halted as his eyes fell on Naruto. There was no recognition there. Another one. He grumbled as he retrieved a firearm from his cloak, much bigger than Naruto's pistol with a wider barrel. The blonde dived but still felt pain explode in his left shin. He winced but managed to roll to cover and assess the damage. Naruto did not know what kind of gun it was, but it turned the bullet to shrapnel as far as the genin could tell. The fact that there was probably mercury currently in his body, melting into liquid form in his very blood, was a serious concern to the young blonde, but he figured that the old blood probably made him resistant or something. Naruto heard footsteps. The old man was approaching him, apparently blood-crazed. The blonde felt a chill go down his spine at the idea he might one day end up like that. Then the footsteps stopped, and a spray of blood spurted past his hiding spot. The blonde peeked the corner and saw a cloaked woman with a mask reminiscent of a bird over her face. Her cloak was even feathered now that he looked closer. The woman had stabbed the man through the back of the neck and out through the throat. Find your peace without dreams. The woman prayed, her voice giving away she was probably old under the mask. Naruto had never encountered anyone else in the dream, and the old man had mentioned not dreaming anymore, so he presumed he was the last in a line or something, but there he saw another Ryoshi, an older woman who killed the old man. What caused him to stop dreaming? Naruto wondered, and the woman jolted in surprise, a testament to the stealth of the young genin. A child? Down here? The woman asked incredulously as she approached. She caught sight of his injured left leg. Oh dear, she muttered as she crouched down only to cock her head to the right as she watched the injury seal shut. Who made someone so young a Ryoshi? She asked. Naruto frowned. I'm not too young, he denied. I'm a shinobi and everything. He insisted. The woman sighed in defeat. Ah, so the idea of those senju truly was doomed to fail. She muttered. Naruto didn't understand that, but he could answer the other question. You, kind of killed the guy who gave me the old blood, by the way. He added. The woman tensed. I see. I apologized then. I knew his life had become tragically long, but I didn't realize how far gone he truly was, she said sorrowfully. Naruto was nervous and hesitant on his next question, but he needed to know, are we becoming Yaju? No, the woman denied sternly, not so quickly at least. It is a sickness of the mind, related to the blood, but we're certain it can be overcome, she insisted. Naruto didn't know what she meant, but he realized those things that looked human, they probably were human once. Everything down here used to be dash. He began to realize slowly what he wanted to continue to deny. No! The woman barked insistently. Whatever their history, a Yaju is just a Yaju. She lectured before she deflated with another sigh. Well, if you've already dreamed, then you must hunt. She added with an air of defeat. Here, a bit of my own fuinjutsu, she said as she lifted a scrap of paper. You know how to use chakra? Naruto interrupted. The doll had known nothing of it. The woman laughed. Of course. I used to be a kunoichi in my youth, but I just hunt now. I was never from an important clan or hired on by anyone, so I found my way down here eventually. She explained. I believe most Ryoshi still around at least know about chakra. She added, now, this fuin when pressed to your head will activate the part of your brain that dreams, a temporary REM state that will pull your body to the last place you dreamed, to safety. She explained. Most of that explanation went right over Naruto's head, but he got the gist that the fuin jutsu would magically teleport him to the last place he rested. Thanks, O-Bacon. He said gratefully. He could tell the old lady was trying to help him because she viewed him as a child, but he was still glad for the help. The woman chuckled at the affectionate title. Apologies for my rudeness, little ninja, call me Maboroshi. She introduced politely. What shall I call you? Naruto thought the wording was weird, but he answered anyway. Naruto. He said honestly. Nice to meet you, Naruto-kun, Maboroshi said with a nod before she stood up. I mustn't dally, but next time I dream I shall ask the doll deliver something to you. This Shisha should be able to do that much. She explained. So, we all get different dreams? Naruto asked curiously. Maboroshi shrugged. I know not for certain, she confessed, but we never occupy the same mental space. The graves, trees, and the shack are always there, as are the Shisha and the doll. She explained. The way the woman spoke, Naruto realized there were probably other Ryoshi besides just them, maybe others who weren't blood-crazed. Then Maboroshi picked up the corpse of the man. I'll dispose of this, help yourself to those, she said in regards to the two weapons. Naruto considered the cane and the bigger gun. He decided to at least take them to the dream and figure them out. He doubted he'd get much use out of them during the Chunin exams though. The doll had informed him the gun was a blunderbuss, and that it did indeed turn quicksilver bullets into quicksilver shrapnel. The blonde wondered if getting shot too often would cause health problems. The journal seemed to think Ryoshi should be immune to mercury poisoning, but a foreign liquid metal in his bloodstream still sounded worrying. Naruto had gone to the depths to help clear his mind, but that had just given him more to think about. After dedicating what shi no ishi he had left into his arcane, he decided to try cataloging the final phase. Most of the contestants were just ninja. Gaara was the only real monster there. Niji, Hanbei, Temari and Kankuro were jerks, but they were still just shinobi at the end of the day. That being said, 4 of the other Konoha shinobi were all from major clans, Hyuga, Uchiha, Aburame, and Nara. Plus the Sunagenin were all rather brutal in how they fought. The blonde could tell Gaara was the real one to be wary of among them. However, Naruto did not have a single way through the sand unless he just trained extra hard physically to try and reach the level Lee had been at. But the blonde was getting ahead of himself. Niji was first, and then Sasuke would be fighting Gaara. The blonde Uzumaki worried about his teammates. Sasuke had been a bit off since the encounter with Orochimaru, and as much as he had once had a crush on Sakura, he could tell she had barely scraped by against Ino using a trick that wouldn't work twice, or on anyone else. Naruto sighed and tried to focus his thoughts. He needed a way to beat Niji first. From what he heard, the Byakugan could see whatever angle he attacked from, and Niji might actually be fast enough to match him in close quarters. And getting his Tenketsu locked up in the first round would be crippling regardless of if he won or lost. However, Niji only had 2 arms. Naruto could create physical bunshin. Naruto could create a lot of physical duplicates of himself and his weapons now that he thought about it, which meant the blonde could outnumber his opponent in any 1-versus-1 engagement. The realization his Kage Bunshin carried duplicates of his weaponry hit Naruto like a bathtub full of ice had been dropped on his head bathtub first, and the blonde suddenly was hit with the possibility of carrying around more shinobi tools and having his Kage Bunshin spam them for him. Naruto rushed to the tombstone that led him to his apartment, showered, got dressed for the day, and rushed out his apartment into the sunrise and almost literally ran into Karen. The girl was carrying a mug of tea and dressed more like she had been when the blonde first met her, but was lacking her hitate and shuriken holster. So you don't just disappear like that. Karen muttered with narrowed eyes. Full disclosure, I felt your chakra disappear. You didn't go anywhere. She explained. I don't care how stealthy you are. What did you do? She demanded to know. Naruto had not thought this far ahead and decided that with Karen, some honesty would be best. I can kind of teleport in my sleep. It's related to the Kenjutsu. I can't explain it very well. He explained poorly and quietly. Karen raised an eyebrow. That's absurd. But at this point I believe it. She retorted dryly. Where are you off to anyway? She asked. I'm going to buy chains, bolas, and a Kusarigama. Naruto responded with a wide grin. He was proud of himself for coming up with such a human ninja solution to his problem. Well, one of his problems anyway. Karen narrowed her eyes as she tried to figure out her blonde relative. She was smart and had medical training, but she was still young and inexperienced. Even then she knew something was up with him. Given his circumstances, it made sense he'd have issues, so she guessed him being so proud of going to get such basic tools and being so happy to go on a basic shopping errand was actually a sign he was getting better, she hoped. What about Hinata-chan? Shouldn't you wait for her to come pick up the jacket? Karen asked instead of voicing her other thoughts. From the wince she guessed the blonde boy had forgotten. Oh right, I guess I should. Naruto muttered hesitantly, scratching his cheek nervously. Karen smirked. She's cute, huh? She teased. Naruto flushed. What does that have to do with anything? He deflected immediately. Cute girls make boys your age nervous, Karen said with a smirk, then she frowned. I guess that only really clicks when we aren't in survival situations. She muttered for reasons the blonde boy did not understand at all. Naruto frowned. I am not nervous, he denied. He was always on edge, so if his default state was above nervous, then he could never be nervous. His internal logic seemed flawless to him. Karen rolled her eyes at the lie. Aha, she said. Hey Hinata-chan. She greeted and watched with a smirk as Naruto jolted in alarm and turned to where she looked, only to turn back with a betrayed and irritated expression when the Hyuga girl was not actually there. You should ask her out, she encouraged teasingly. No, Naruto denied firmly, and Karen's expression dropped to a surprised one with wide eyes at his tone. The blonde hesitated on a good explanation. I shouldn't, he said vaguely. Karen pursed her lips as she considered that response. Hyuga, right? She guessed, and the blonde shrugged. Well, I still say you should anyway, she insisted. But I guess saving it until after you avenge her honor against her lesser clansmen in front of the entire village and visiting dignitaries is so much more romantic, she sighed. Naruto decided not to break the news that he didn't intend to do it then either. Maybe, he said with a shrug, but he had other things to worry about. The idea of asking Maboroshi for advice occurred to him if he ran into her again, but he wasn't sure when that would be. He'd run into her by chance because she'd been hunting a beast he ran into. A beast that had definitely been a person once, a Ryoshi turned Yaju. The blonde turned sharply towards his door. I might as well grab that jacket, he decided. He needed a distraction. He needed action, movement, something to hunt, or at the very least something to do. Karen shrugged and sipped her tea. Soon enough the blonde boy returned with a blood-stained and torn jacket. Wow, she muttered, it'll be a miracle if she gets this done at all, she warned. Naruto pouted. I really like this jacket though, he insisted. He learned the red spiral was even a memorial thing. The whole jacket was symbolic and his favorite colors. Karen didn't fully get it, but she recognized both symbols as clan symbols and nodded without further comment. When Hinata did finally arrive, it was with Kiba as an escort, who had raised an eyebrow at the two. Who even are you anyway? He asked her suspiciously. Karen Uzumaki, Karen answered blandly, surprising both the genin of Cell 8 with the news and the other Uzumaki that she'd revealed it so casually. I just met likely my only living relative and decided to drop everything to come be his personal physician, she explained. Hinata nodded in dumbfounded understanding. An area ninja already? That's impressive, Kiba noted, but his eyes were still narrowed. So why were you two out here? He asked. I was enjoying my tea and I noticed Naruto and I about to run off, so I reminded him Hinata-chan was coming today, Karen explained honestly, and the blonde flushed in embarrassment. So I reminded him to get the jacket before he ran off on whatever epiphany he had regarding weaponry, she added. Hinata looked at the ruined jacket. Wow, she muttered, the fact the person wearing it had survived those injuries was beyond impressive. I'll, do what I can, she promised with no confidence. She'd forgotten exactly how bad it had been. Kiba couldn't resist the urge to ask, so is you not being dead after that an Uzumaki thing, or a Kyuubi thing? He asked curiously. Naruto frowned since he wasn't sure. He glanced at Karen, who met his eyes. Both, they said at the same time a moment later. So that Kitsune enhances inborn abilities or something? Kiba wondered. Sorry if this is weird to talk about casually, but shit dude, you made it to the finals. For all I know, you might actually pass. He pointed out, stunning the blonde with the show of confidence. If that happens and you make Chunin, you might wind up in charge of me for some mission, and since we're not competing, I'm curious. He finished with a shrug. Naruto was not entirely sure when his mouth had opened. He vocalized as his brain struggled to keep up with the blend of praise and interest. I have no idea what I'm capable of. He confessed bluntly. Are the eyes a QB thing? Yes. Naruto answered quickly. Kiba nodded but frowned. Why is that still happening anyway? He asked. Good question, a new voice interrupted and startled the genin. Before I find out, could you kids explain why you're casually discussing Konohagakure no Sato military secrets in public? Karen shivered, she hadn't felt the man coming. Naruto hadn't heard a thing, either had Kiba smelled anything and Akamaru whined to let the Inuzuka know even the canine hadn't detected anything. Hinata had not had her Byakugan active, so she was as surprised as anyone. They all looked at the tall middle-aged man, with waist-length white hair pulled back into a ponytail, 2 shoulder-length bangs framing his face, a hatayite with the kanji for oil on it that had 2 small horns to it over his forehead, a small silver piercing in the left side of his nose, wearing a short green kimono, matching green pants. A black belt mesh armor underneath visible at his wrists, ankles, and chest. On top that, the man wore a red haori with 2 yellow circles on either side of the chest, and on his feet were a pair of geta. The man had a raised eyebrow at them and had his arms crossed as he waited for an answer. In my defense, it got revealed twice by others before I gave up, technically 3 times if you count the time Mizuki told me. Naruto answered. He left out that he had not believed a word of it at first. The man scoffed. All right, from what I hear of what happened and what I see of that jacket, fair enough. He said with a shake of his head, well, I guess I might as well get this over with. I'm Jiraiya, of the Sannin. I'm here to undo the work of that snake. He explained. Truthfully, Jiraiya would have liked a few days to relax first, but his old sensei had been insistent he check since Orochimaru had apparently done something to the fuin containing the Kyuubi. Naruto frowned. He was about to protest and say that Orochimaru had mentioned his fuin suppressing the Katun further, but he knew that would be a bad thing to say. How do I know you're telling the truth? He asked instead. Jiraiya blinked, his mouth opened in surprise before it snapped shut into a grimace. All right, fair point. He confessed. Tell you what, would you feel more comfortable if Kakashi was present when I removed the fuin Orochimaru placed over the fuin? He asked. Naruto considered it as what Jiraiya said clicked in Kiba's head, and the Inuzuka finally got over being starstruck. Some nuke messed with the fuin. He snapped once he realized what had been implied. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I think Kakashi-sensei should be present. He decided.